Hello and welcome to the latest episode of First Word in Sport. James, how have the last few days been for you?
Yeah, very good. Happy New Year all. Still here in Lanzarote. Had a bit of winter sun, although a bit of a storm here today. So the beach is closed, but first world problems with that. Can't complain yourself.
Very cold here. It's been minus 12, minus 15. Did go and see a hockey game last night. So it's probably out of the four major US sports is the one sort of follow least by a significant margin. But got to watch Maple Leafs play against Winnipeg. Great game. Came a few years ago and saw them get absolutely destroyed by Sidney Crosby. When they were 4-1 down early on last night, I thought I wasn't going to be allowed back in the stadium or arena again. They actually rallied to win 6-5, I think it was in the end. So it was a great game, great fun. But yeah, it was nice to go with friends who obviously know a lot more about the sport than I do. So I do try and keep my hand on top of how Toronto are getting on. But it's only at a distance, should we say. So one interesting thing last night did see, James, was 4-1 down, goaltender got pulled, substitute or the other goaltender came in, had a brilliant game. Just something you never see in football, changing goalkeepers, goaltenders halfway through a game when a team is struggling.
No, you very rarely see it in football with the penalty shootout. You remember Kepa nearly got pulled off in that Carabao Cup final a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, against Liverpool and refused. So, yeah, you don't see that often as well. Well, not at all, really, do you?
I think what was interesting was to the guy who came on, he's 6'7", he's enormous. I don't quite know how anyone ever scores against him. It just makes me think about Jordan Pickford and how small he is. But let's not go there for now. Interesting week of sport. Obviously, we've had lots of football in the last 3 days. I mean, I think most of yesterday's football will have sent people to sleep. It wasn't very pretty. But let's go back to earlier in the week. The big news of the week is Arsenal sort of cementing their title chase. They obviously had a 4-1 win against Aston Villa. Any particular thoughts on the week, James? Before I'll come on to that game shortly after I hear your thoughts.
On the Arsenal game, Villa didn't take their chances in the first half, had Arsenal on the ropes, didn't take advantage. I thought not playing McGinn was a strange one, or starting him at all, and playing Sancho as well, when McGinn has been quite superb for Villa for months and months now. Didn't understand that choice. Obviously, no Cash, no Kamara suspended, and no Torres, who looks like he's out for another couple of weeks as well, judging by Emery's comments today. Didn't take the chances, and then set-piece football club score again 2 minutes in. I do take things on Martinez. He's a bit of a softie at times, and he's making way too many errors from what he was. He's making too many errors. He was a soft goal concede, and once Arsenal scored the first goal in a game like that, the second goal was brilliant from Zubimendi. He quite smartly has fitted into that team on the quiet as well, and been very good for a player that's come from Sociedad, who aren't top of their league, obviously in Spain. He's been quietly impressive there. And then Villa almost gave up at 2-0, stopped running, didn't really... made a few subs, 4-0, and then see Watkins scored, and then McGinn should have scored. That was a great save by Raya at the end, but yeah, disappointing for Villa. Arsenal, yeah, march on. It's a good win for them, although they didn't play great in the first half. Well, they didn't play great at all in the first half. They keep winning. Scored some open play goals, which was nice to see for a change.
So I thought it was interesting. It's obviously difficult sometimes with a sort of Villa hat on as such to be objective. I thought Villa played pretty well in that first half in terms of nullifying what Arsenal were trying to do. So what you did see was that trying to overload on the left-hand side up against Bogard. Bogard isn't a right back per se. He's much better as a holding midfielder. And, Cash being absent, it did shine through a little bit. And we saw it in the second half when Garcia came on as well. I mean, what you see in those sorts of games is just how deep Arsenal's squad is. Because Arsenal were missing Rice. But all the players that they're bringing in are players they've spent 50, 60 million pounds on. They have so many options. Problem for Villa is, when they were missing Cash, Kamara, is, the replacement level players. Garcia hasn't played for Villa for so long. And he's coming on being asked to do a job almost in desperation because we're so short in that right back position. We're short of centre backs with Torres and Mings out. And Kamara, who could play there in an emergency. Central midfield suddenly looks light on numbers. It's, I think that was what really shined through, was just the lack of depth. And, a lot of that comes back from just how much money teams like Arsenal have spent relative to Villa. The one thing I would say about Martinez, I mean, we've touched on the situation with goalkeepers and, corners and set pieces before. And actually, I don't mind that one particularly from a goalkeeper's perspective. He does have to be stronger. I think one of the problems he has is he always tries to catch the ball rather than punch it. And I think in that situation, he actually got caught the wrong side of Gabriel. He needed to be in front of Gabriel rather than let Gabriel get between him and the ball. And, I have no real problem with that being allowed. I mean, some people will question it, but I have no problem with that. It's the other stuff that goes on around these set pieces that, as I say, I object to, where keepers aren't allowed a fair chance at the ball. Martinez had a fair chance at the ball, and he was poor. And his confidence doesn't look like what it was even 2 or 3 weeks ago on corners. So it'd be interesting to see how that sort of plays out. There's no getting away from the decision to not send Merino off. I mean, we saw it with just silly little fouls that Saka did in the first half, which were the most obvious yellow cards you can ever imagine, and not given anything. Okay. And then Merino, it's the most simple second yellow card, red card you'll ever see. 2-0 may make no difference to the game, but it would probably put Arsenal under some pressure. And it's not given. And a bit like Diaz last week, I just literally cannot begin to understand how we have VAR, how we have, supposedly these great referees, how they can literally, Darren England in that situation has completely bottled it.
Yeah, there's no way, 2 ways about it. He's bottled it. And you say about VAR, I don't understand. They don't like to re-referee games. Okay, but we go back to it. Get the decision right or wrong. It's a clear second yellow. There's no... If you can't see that as being a second yellow, then you shouldn't be refereeing a game of football because everyone knows what he's done. He's dragged the player back, and it's a straight yellow card. He should be off. Now, yeah, as you said, Arsenal might have won the game anyway at 2-0, shut up shop and try and break us down. But it still means they're playing for 40 minutes with 10 men, might get a few more injuries. There might be another couple of yellow cards in desperation, and it might affect them later down in the season. But I just can't understand why these referees can't make these simple decisions. It's not a hard decision to make. I understand, we talked about it, some decisions like a handball or whatever like that, that's an easy decision that anyone should be able to make at that level.
And I think that's where I think one of the problems with VAR and everything is, you do get all these contentious decisions and things like that. There's nothing remotely contentious about that. It's just everyone can see that the wrong decision's made. And I think that's where the frustrations come from. And, I know Arsenal fans feel like they've been on the wrong end of a lot of decisions in recent years and the way they behave when that happens. They obviously dodged a massive bullet there. It's tough not to sound like whiny, but it makes a difference in those sorts of games. I didn't think Arsenal were that impressive in that first half, and one of the problems you have, I sort of look back on it and everything I read around it was, Arsenal were amazing, Arsenal were this, Arsenal were that. at half time, they were struggling, right? Let's be really clear about the big moment in that game was Onana going off at half time injured. He was bossing that midfield without Rice there. Arsenal couldn't cope with his legs, the way he was bursting forward. And him going off, and it was no coincidence then that he was missed at set piece as well. And it changed the game. But I don't hear people, talk about these types of things. When he was there in that game at 0-0 at half time, Arsenal was struggling. He goes off, obviously, Villa made Martinez makes a howler, and suddenly Arsenal run riot, which is fine. It happens. They get decisions in their favour. But some of the narratives I've seen in terms of, what an incredible performance it was from Arsenal. It just feels like it's just the way football, I guess, is perceived. It's an incredibly frustrating game at times when you see that, how narrative, people become in terms of outcomes, rather than actually watching what has happened.
Yeah, people don't watch games again at all. They just watch it, get told by whatever, and then just forget about actually what happened during the game. 2 points from that. Onana, yeah, he's injury prone, unfortunately, but he's a big physical presence in that Villa midfield. And that's the way the Premier League's going at the moment. We talked about it. You need to be big and strong. You need to be big lumps, quick and physical, and stay fit. And that's probably why you've seen a congested Premier League, because there's lots of teams who've got lots of players like that. And secondly, I wonder whether anyone will take a risk with this idea I've got, or I know Maresca will come on to, but he used it at Chelsea, and Barcelona used it years ago, talked about it. When go and chuck 3 or 4 players up front, when the opposition got corner and gone then, what are you going to do? It'd just be interesting to see in a one-off game. Maybe they try in an FA Cup game, and it doesn't really make a difference. But it'd be interesting to see if Villa decided at 0-0, go on then, we'll go and stick 3 players up front. What are you going to do, Arsenal? Just be fun to see. Because then keep come out and dominate the area. He's bigger than everyone else, so you clear everyone out.
I think it will happen. So I think what you're seeing is teams have spent a lot of time working on set pieces offensively, in terms of particularly with throw-ins as well. But what you're not seeing is the response quite yet in terms of how to come up with a solution to it. I think one of the problems you have is the way the refereeing has gone in terms of what's allowed, what's not allowed. Whilst so much pushing, blocking, shoving's allowed, it's quite tricky. But I love the idea of having 3 or 4 players up front, because what you're going to do is you are going to create space. It is going to make fouls more obvious, in terms of that blocking. And you'll also find that it's going to be interesting to see which players have to stay back. So it tends to be your smaller, quicker players who are further forward, who aren't much use in set pieces anyway. And does a team want to match up against small, faster players with, which players do they match up with them? They don't want big central defenders back there because they want them in the box. Is it going to be fullbacks? How do you actually sort of work out logistically how to counter that?
And you wouldn't be able to practice for it either, because it would just be done on the first corner. You'd be like panicking. What do? You'd be shouting across. And my final point on the Arsenal-Aston Villa game, can we please, or the PGML, make sure that Mikel Arteta stays in his technical area? Because one point during that game where Jadon Sancho was up against the left-back, and he had, in his peripheral vision, Arteta standing on...
He had a player there, yeah.
Had a player there and didn't go on the outside, had to put it back in field. He spends 95% of the time outside his technical area. What are the referees, and not the referees per se, what's the fourth official doing about it? Absolutely nothing again. Just book him. You go out there, it's a straight red card. It's as simple as that. He's the only manager that does it. Well, Eddie Howe and Jason Tindall kind of do it as well, but it's not to the same degree. And I'm not having to dig up Arteta just for the sake of it, but it was quite obvious on the weekend again, on whenever the game was. But that's my final rant on that.
I mean, I think there was a whole series of weird little incidents around that game and after that game. So you had the non-handshake from Emery, which I'm not a fan of at all. You go and shake the opponent manager's hand at all costs. You can be annoyed, you can be anything. You rise above it, and you go and do that. You set an example. And the other thing I saw that was interesting was, I don't know if you saw the footage from the tunnel where Martinez was getting absolute pelters from some fans, and then obviously reacted to it. And it's just like, what is wrong with football fans? Like, you wouldn't go to someone else's workplace and just literally hurl abuse at them and expect nothing back. And it's just like, I don't really understand it. It is a game. Yes, be passionate, but the need to be so aggressive, in that sort of environment, it's just a bit weird, honestly.
And then cry wolf when the player throws abuse back at you.
We saw it with
abuse at him first. Expect it back.
We saw it with the NFL. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago with DK Metcalf and the Detroit Lions fan, and it could end up costing him $30 million. The fan was clearly giving him a lot of abuse. I know he said, "Oh, I only said his name," and all this sort of stuff. And Metcalf literally, he didn't even punch him. He just pushed him away, and he's, got himself into all sorts of trouble for it. I don't know. I just think fans need to sort of not grow up, but it just seems a very weird situation. But
do you remember when Carragher threw that £1 coin in an FA Cup game at Highbury, the library, against Arsenal fans? Got 3-match ban for it. It's ridiculous. Should have kept it and put it in his back pocket.
Let's not go there with him. So obviously, massive game for Arsenal that was, given what happened with City yesterday. Arsenal 4 points ahead of City now. City was interesting yesterday against Sunderland because very poor first half. And what was interesting was Pep made a couple of changes yesterday that he hasn't really made recently in terms of that starting lineup. And they just weren't quite as fluent. And it's almost like they have this one team that they can get success with, change one or two component parts, like bring in a Savinho, and they're struggling. So, and the other big sort of takeaway from that game was Rodri obviously came on at half time for Gonzalez, who picked up a knock. No coincidence that City were 5 times the team in that second half. Rodri, where they can get back to full fitness, he is an incredibly important player. He's just an incredible footballer in terms of the way he manipulates space, makes angles for players. He's just so underrated, I think, in terms of the simple things he does. It just makes City so much better. And they missed loads of chances in the end yesterday, but it could be costly in terms of that title race.
Yeah, it's still only 4 points, but yeah, they would expect to win that. Great result for Sunderland again, considering their players unavailable. But yeah, getting Rodri back to 70% of what he was. And they don't need to play him every game now until the end of the season. They can manage his minutes because they can play him against good sides and beat the rubbish at home. Probably doesn't need to play at home against a lot of sides. If they get him back to playing, say, 20 games this season left for him, he could be absolutely vital. He's probably the best player in the league. He's certainly the best player in that position pre his ACL in the world. Yeah, I mean, they're going to buy some menu. Looks like in the next 24, 48 hours. We do this on a Friday afternoon. He'll add a dimension, a bit more pace, especially with no Doku. They kind of lack a little bit of pace.
Well, Doku came back yesterday.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah. Would they play Doku and Semenyo on either wing? It'd be interesting to see. But yeah, Rodri back. Big. It's you could say 2 points drop, but it's not the end of the world. It's still 4 points. Still got to play them at home. So
talk to me about one of the other 0-0 bore fests yesterday, James. I know you can't wait to discuss Liverpool and Slot.
Oh my, it's going over old ground, isn't it? But yeah, like when every player's playing badly, can't be blaming the players, lads. It's the manager's fault. Again, I don't understand. He's gone back to his 4-3-3 again. It's like he's playing football or managing. Clearly, he doesn't want to get the sack, obviously, because it ruined. He wants to manage Liverpool for a long time. But he selected one player, one attacker yesterday at home to Leeds in Hugo Ekitike. He played a right back or a right wing or a right wing back as a right winger in Frimpong. He played Florian Wirtz left wing, which is fine. But when you play with Robertson, you can't play Wirtz as a left winger because Robertson's not going to get up and down that flank. Play with Kirkes. It hasn't been any coincidence that Kirkes has looked far better recently playing with Wirtz and playing with Jones in that left-sided midfield role that Jones can cover Kirkes when he goes off and Wirtz can come inside. But no, he went back to Robertson. Didn't create anything. And it's the mid-low block press. It's not even a pressing. There's one part of the first half where the gap between Liverpool's midfield and attackers was 15 yards. Gravenberch and Jones were holding hands 5 yards inside the Leeds half. Bear in mind, Leeds had the ball on their box. 3 or 4 passes later, the players running turned around 10, 15 yards and running at Canate in 4 passes. And there's no press. There's no control. He generally doesn't have a clue. And it's about time FSG grew a pair of proverbials and sacked him and did what Chelsea had done, although in different circumstances, realised that Maresca isn't going to be the man to take the club forward. Yeah, big worrying times for Liverpool. And I wouldn't be surprised. I thought they might buy a couple of players this January. I would not be surprised if they don't buy anyone and kept their powder dry, kept the cash in their back pocket, knowing that they don't want Slot, waiting till they want the coach they want. Whether it's now, whether it's in March, whether it's in summer, try and hang on to 4th or 5th to get in Champions League and see where you are and not give. Why would you give Slot more cash now when you know he's not working? And it's not, I'll say it again, it's been since March when Trent Alexander-Arnold told the club officially that he was gone. Liverpool have been downright poor and they've got some tough games coming up. Fulham on Sunday and then they're going to get spanked at Arsenal. Arsenal will absolutely tear them apart the way Liverpool are playing. They haven't been good. Yeah, they're unbeaten late. No, thank you,
I mean, we've touched on it before. I think the fixture list has been incredibly kind to Slot recently. That they really haven't had many difficult games, and they've obviously had a little bit of luck here and there, like the Tottenham game. Simon's getting himself sent off, and suddenly you end up on this nice run of results. But I think the underlying performances, as you have touched on, have been so poor, and I would expect it to be exposed in the coming weeks. Let's talk about Amorim first. That Man United result. Having seen Villa get thumped by Arsenal, few things can put a smile on your face, but United dropping points at home to Wolves does that. And not just that, it was an incredibly poor performance from United. They obviously got injury problems, AFCON problems. I think the thing that I was talking to a friend about was when you look at the squad building for this Man United team, to know that you've got AFCON coming up as well, to go and buy players who are going to be away in January, for the AFCON, for the 6 games or up to 6 games. It feels like you've got to have some really good players to be able to buy these African players willingly, knowing that AFCON's going to take them out. So it's fine if you have a Salah or someone like that, but some of these other players, particularly in the situation someone like United find themselves in, to buy players who are going to be missing at AFCON, it just seems like such poor sort of squad planning.
It is. 2 points on Amorim. He's not good enough. He should be sacked now. I actually think he changed back to formation again, back to his 3-4-2-1 formation. When they got the result against Newcastle, but it was slightly a better performance. They took the handbrake off. Man United, as we've grown up, have always played on the front foot with 60-65% of the ball, with wingers getting the ball in the box, attacking, scoring goals. Amorim doesn't do that. So that's why the fans are annoyed, because they're not used to playing this formation with any sort of attacking ideas. So he goes back to his other formation that plays Xerxes off on the right. He's got Casemiro and Ugarte centre midfield. There's no ball progression there whatsoever. And then they were lucky not to lose that game in hindsight. Yeah, they've got things like that, but they've got huge issues. And what are they going to do, right? So I think that Amorim wants to get sacked rather than he can then go, hold my hands up and go, it's an impossible job, saving his reputation a bit rather than him walking kind of thing. He could do a great job. Still think he's a half-decent manager. Obviously, question marks. But go to Italy, where 3 at the back is more suited to his style in the game. Maybe go and manage even an Inter Milan, because Chivu's there under pressure, or even at Juventus for a bit of a mess. But that'd be perfect for him to go and manage in Italy, rebuild his career there. So they're now talking about buying Glasner, or getting Glasner maybe. Well, Glasner plays what formation? If I'm mistaken? 3 at the back? So what are you going to do? Like, you can't. There are I can't see United winning league for the next 10 years minimum. They're so far behind, and they haven't got the right people at the top of the club, let alone on the football pitch, running that club. Ineos, if you go back and look at their resume, sports-wise, Nice Football Club, shambles. Ineos Grenadiers, after Sky, they've been really bad. Now, they used to be top of the tree in Tour de France and cycling with Froome and Wiggins, et al. And now they haven't, I think a couple of years ago, didn't even win one stage of any of the 3 Grand Tours.
Marginal gains, James. Marginal gains.
The marginal gains with what the DRUGS that we're not allowed to talk about. But anyway. Anyway. So yeah, they're a mess. A couple other points during another good result for Everton. Didn't they win Everton?
Everton beat Forest.
That's a fantastic result for Everton. When I saw that team,
missing all those players that Everton are.
When I saw that team, I think I texted you going, that's such a weak Everton side. But yeah, Forest, you talked about it a couple of weeks ago. Sean Dyche is in trouble there, because they've got some good players.
There's a real disconnect at the moment with Forest. I think he had to obviously Villa play Forest tomorrow, and there's a real disconnect with Forest at the moment between the players that they have. You look at their starting lineup, and there's a lot of decent players in that lineup, and the actual performances, they're just so far off it, particularly if they concede that first goal. They're really struggling to break teams down. I mean, we saw against Fulham where they lost 1-0. It was just almost a lackluster performance. You can't be losing 2-0 at home to that Everton lineup. I know that obviously Garner scored relatively early on. Nice finish, took his chance.
He's a good player, by the way.
Very versatile, very useful. And I know Forest, the emphasis is then on Forest to break down Everton. We saw it when Everton beat them 3-0 at Hill Dickinson earlier in the season. Again, got an early goal, the own goal from, I think it was Milenkovic. And then in that game, Forest again couldn't break Everton down. And I think one thing I would say about Moyes is there aren't many managers I would take ahead of Moyes if I wanted to set up a team to not get broken down. He is so good.
Yeah, brilliant what he does, yeah.
And the emphasis was put on Forest to break them down, and they didn't really come that close to breaking them down. And then obviously Everton have added a second, and it's just an amazing result for Everton, really, and just fair play to them and Moyes in particular. But I just don't know what this Forest team is about, to be honest. I'm just left in a bit of a quandary as to where they're at. What I do know is that they need to start picking up some results, because the other promoted teams, not the other, but the promoted teams of obviously Leeds, Sunderland keep churning out results. Even West Ham picked up a point. it doesn't take too many results for Forest to get dragged right back into the mess. And obviously, West Ham are playing Wolves for the week, tomorrow. So could easily see Forest come under a bit more pressure than they are at the moment. They should be cakewalking, they should be nowhere near relegation zone.
Yeah, they've got some good players. Yeah, you've got some really good players.
All right, let's talk about just quickly, Thomas Frank on his absolute snooze fest again yesterday. So you touched on transfer windows, actually, so that will be an interesting one. Unlike perhaps Slot, I suspect that the Tottenham board will back Frank in this window. I suspect Frank will get till the end of the season. Not necessarily think he should, but I suspect they will back him this transfer window. But they look so average, it's untrue.
Yeah, boring, weren't they singing to Frank yesterday? So he's under big pressure there.
It's one thing you touched on United earlier and this is going to be relevant when we talk about Maresca in a minute, is style of play matters.
Yeah.
And that's the worry I would have for Frank, is they are playing horrendous football. And the fans will get bored of it. You don't want to pay good money to go and watch absolute rubbish.
Same at Anfield.
So let's talk about Maresca. Obviously, Chelsea drew 2-2 against Bournemouth. Pretty crazy game, actually, when you watched it. It's just a wild game. Obviously, we've talked about Maresca before for a few weeks now. I've been in the belief that he wouldn't be there for long. He's now gone. What are your initial thoughts?
Not surprised. Obviously, we've now come out that he had a clause in his contract, which I've never heard of something like this before, where if he spoke to, I think it was Man City and another team, I can't remember who it was, he had to inform the Chelsea hierarchy that he had these discussions, right? So that's not so. Well, I've never heard of that in my life watching football or any other sport where you got that in your contract. So he clearly wasn't there for long term then, even so he signed a contract for 5 years, 18 months ago. Was he actually picking the team, or was it Todd Bodie and the guys behind picking that team all the time? Yeah, it hadn't surprised me at all after his comments a couple of weeks ago saying hardest 48 hours of my career here, etc., etc. Look at Palmer's reactions in the last two times, been taken off, barely even looking at him when he walked off the field the other day. They still had those issues of Enzo and Palmer on the same side when they want to play the same position. And now they're talking about appointing Liam Rosenior as their new manager. I see they've just appointed Callum McFarlane, who's their under-21 coach, as interim coach. I don't know how long that is for, but he's taking charge of the game at the weekend. If they appoint Liam Rosenior, if you're a big player there, you can be like, who is this chap? And he's only going to be in because he's managing Strasbourg, that the Chelsea owners own in France. And we've talked about it here on this pod, that managing a top club is not all about tactics. It's a lot about managing egos. And we know that Chelsea, even though they've got youngsters on that side, they've got massive egos. Palmer's a massive ego. Enzo Fernandez is a massive ego. Reece James, probably one of the biggest egos going around. Liam Rosenior comes in. Who do you think is going to... Who's running that team? It's not going to be Liam Rosenior. It's going to be the players. And that's a recipe for disaster. It's a complete and utter mess. And it has been for a long time at Chelsea. What, are they on their sixth manager at the moment? These owners? 6? How are we supposed to win stuff? It's ridiculous.
Okay, so let's take a step back a little bit in terms of, there's obviously a lot of off-field stuff going on with Maresca in terms of, confrontations or the issues with the board, potentially with medical staff that's now coming out. But I often touch on the idea of looking at before a season starts, what is, a benchmark for what a team should be achieving? Because I think if you come back to it, it helps to put into perspective what sort of transpires subsequently. So obviously Maresca has had a modicum of success at Chelsea. Obviously, they qualified for Champions League last game of the season last year against Forest. They got a result. Obviously, they won the Conference League and they obviously won the World Club Championships. And I think far too much credit ends up being given to Maresca's sort of managerial achievements. Winning that Conference League. I mean, they barely played a first team until they got to the sort of semi-finals, final. I mean, it was an absolute joke of a competition. And we'll see it again this year. I'll be amazed if Palace don't go and win that competition. It's not a huge achievement for a manager managing a club like Chelsea to be winning that competition. I thought they were disappointing a little bit in the league last year in terms of scraping into the Champions League. They have spent fortunes. I know they're buying and selling players, but they've still spent absolute fortunes on these players. Obviously, winning the Club World Championship was unexpected, but it doesn't move the needle, I don't think, in terms of how good or otherwise Maresca is as a manager. I think people forget how inexperienced he still is. Obviously his first job was at Leicester. Having been at City, obviously under Pep, Leicester obviously got promoted. Leicester had a very good team. It wasn't some underdog story.
That's in the Championship, though. He'd never managed in the Premier League before. Exactly. Yeah.
Obviously, and towards the end of them going up in the Championship, they were wobbling big time under Maresca. Obviously got the Chelsea job. This year, if you look at what Chelsea have done, despite having spent another fortune, is they're fifth in the league, joint number of points with Man United in sixth. They're not particularly close to the teams above them. Liverpool slightly just above them, but then big gap to say Villa. You'd have to say league form has been disappointing, really disappointing this season. There's no way they should be 9 points behind Villa or whatever it is. That's disastrous, really. Is Champions League, I think they're 13th in the group stages, so they're not going to finish in the top 8 and automatically qualify for the last 16. Obviously, they're in the Carabao Cup semi-finals where they play Arsenal. We've touched on the style of football. Chelsea fans have been very reticent about him, even well back into last season, about the style of football that Maresca plays. It is so boring. It's so negative. You have signed all these players and you're playing utterly garbage football at times. And I think that is also a factor in where we're at the moment and I don't really see it talked about, the actual performance of Chelsea on the pitch, ignore all the off-field stuff, has been incredibly average given the money that they've spent. I said at the beginning of the season, they should be looking to progress. They should be looking for third, fourth position. That should be the benchmark. And they're not there. They've been poor.
Yeah, but you can finish third, right? And you can be 5 points behind the champions, or you can finish third and you can be 35 points behind. So finishing third or position-wise really makes no difference. How far you're actually physically points behind makes a big difference.
The gap is certainly not closed between them and, say, an Arsenal. It's just grown and grown.
Absolutely light years away. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see who they appoint. If they appoint Liam Rosenior, they ain't getting top 4. It's just simple as that.
I just think it'd be such a... All right, you sign all these young superstars, okay, or potentially young superstars, and there's no reason why Chelsea shouldn't be aiming for one of the top, say, 10 managers in the world. That should be their sort of aspirations. Now, who those 10 managers are is open to debate, but they should be looking at elite managers. And yes, there aren't that many elite managers around at the moment, and certainly not many that are available, particularly in a World Cup year. So it might be a case of wait till summer, and then you can get, a bigger name in there. But Liam Rosenior, if you look at his track record, he also got sacked by Hull like 18 months ago or something like that. And yes, he was probably slightly unfortunate to get sacked at Hull because they weren't doing that badly. But, he's obviously gone to Strasbourg. One of the things about someone like Strasbourg is they benefit massively from all the Chelsea loan players. So it actually distorts how good they are. I just find it absolutely bewildering that they would go down this path. But, as a football fan of a different club, I absolutely love to see them spend so much money and make so many poor decisions.
Well, that's two, isn't it? Man United and Chelsea. Yeah, gone, yeah. It amazes me how these clubs spend all this money and actually just a shambles, yeah. I see Richard Keys saying it should have gone to John Terry.
Oh, where do you even begin with Richard Keys, honestly? But it's part of the problem is you have people like that stealing a living. Let's touch on transfer window quickly because it will matter. How much business gets done remains to be seen. Not much has happened yet. Obviously, Brennan Johnson's gone to Palace. They're talking about £33.5 million. I think Tottenham have done pretty well to get that money for him, to be honest. Obviously he scored some goals at Tottenham, but he's been pretty disappointing. And I think if you were to ask a Tottenham fan, the overall assessment of Johnson would be, yes, he scores goals, but he's not very good in other parts of the game. It just seems like a lot of money that Palace are paying for him.
He must have been given playing assurances by Glasgow and Palace because I look at their front three and where he's going to play with Mateta. Obviously going to start Pino, not Deeney, the young Irish lad. It is Deeney, isn't it? Definitely, sorry, the young Irish lad. And Ismail Sarr. So he must have been given some assurances where he's going to play because he ain't going to go there and not start.
There's no way he starts ahead of Sarr.
No, so you have to. But he's not going to. Palace aren't breaking their transfer record by £5 million after buying Benteke off us, and not starting him.
Maybe
Mendy's going to go. It'd be interesting to see if Mark Gay goes anywhere. He should do. He should leave Palace now.
Well, I think with Palace not competing still for maybe a top 4, top 5. Realistically, I think Palace would be crazy not to try and cash in on him now and get, even if you're getting 15-20 million now,
it
makes more sense than letting him go for nothing in the summer. I think so. There's so West Ham's an interesting one. Obviously, Fulkrug has left. Looks like it's on loan, but it could be up to a £5 million transfer fee.
Who's paying £5 million for him?
When you talk about disastrous transfers, that is right up there, and almost sums up West Ham. So, because I saw West Ham, they're very close to signing. So, a guy called Tati Castellanos and another guy called Pablo. Don't know much about either, if I'm honest. Given their recent record of spending or transfers, I wouldn't be overly filled with confidence. Even the players that West Ham have been linked with. Now, obviously, links, a lot of it's lazy clickbait or agents. But when you see them linked to the likes of Strand Larsen, they've been linked with Sterling, these types of players, I don't even know where to start with West Ham.
A circus, as my mate at work keeps on telling me.
So Harvey Elliott might be an interesting one. Obviously, he hasn't played at Villa. I think a lot of Villa fans worked it out quite a few weeks ago when he wasn't appearing in squads. He has this weird clause where if he plays 10 games, the transfer becomes permanent. He won't get to 10 games. Villa don't want to make the signing permanent. It looks like it wasn't necessarily an Emery signing. It was more of a Monchi signing. Monchi's obviously now left Villa. The problem for Elliott is that he can't join another team in Europe. So there's been some chat about him potentially going to Charlotte FC in America for the rest of the season. I mean, he obviously could go back to Liverpool, I think, but
he can, he won't. And Villa have to pay a fine. I don't know what the fine is, or they have to send it. Slot won't take him back. He wouldn't. People have been saying he wouldn't get in the Liverpool team, let alone he might not even make the bench. To go back to it, he's not big. He's not physical enough to play in the Premier League at the moment. He needs to almost bin the season off and go to Germany or go to Holland or somewhere like that, because he can't play in the Premier League.
Well, I think it's interesting, right? So both from a Villa perspective and a Liverpool perspective, right? So I don't necessarily think it's a case of Villa paying a fine. So they would have their loan fee that they will pay. The one problem Liverpool have is come the summer, they get Elliott back, right? And he's a slightly diminished product on where he was 6 months ago. And if Liverpool don't want his value to fall too much, they want him playing, right? So you'd think there would be some agreement between the clubs at some level, because it doesn't benefit Liverpool for him to be set out for the next 6 months. Obviously, it doesn't benefit Elliott. It doesn't necessarily benefit Villa, because it means Villa can't bring in other loan players. I'd be amazed if a solution isn't found somewhere.
Yeah, he won't play for Liverpool again, full stop. It's that simple.
And he won't play for Villa, so...
Yeah.
I think, so this transfer window, let's just touch on it briefly. So I think it's always fascinating, because one, you do see whether teams are willing to back their managers. You also get to see how aggressive teams want to be in terms of if they're chasing titles or, trying to avoid relegation, things like that, as to how serious they are. So let's put it this way: someone like Burnley isn't going to go and spend a lot of money. They know that they're done. They're going to get relegated. West Ham's interesting because obviously West Ham, I think these two players they're talking about was best part of £45 million on these two players, which is a pretty serious bid at not trying to get relegated. But they're massive favourites to get relegated. So it seems a big risk that the ownership group is sort of taking. And then I guess the other thing in terms of the transfer window is we will see so much absolute nonsense written in the next month in terms of linking players. A lot of it agent speak, a lot of it just lazy news sources, you name it. The transfer window is a complete clown show.
Yeah, always has been, always will be, unfortunately. But yeah. Should we move on to some other sports?
Yep.
You obviously got the cricket, the fifth and final test match starting on Saturday night UK to Sunday morning Australia. England have to make one change. Gus Atkinson's out injured, obviously, so they've included Matthew Potts and Shoaib Bashir. I mean, they're going to play Potts, they're not going to play Bashir. So Potts will come in and make his Ashes debut. I like him, actually. He's been treated pretty shabbily by McCullum, if you think about it. He can hold a line, he can hold a length. Just because he can't bowl 85 miles an hour, McCullum doesn't like him. So anyway, bye-bye, Baz McCullum. Go back to New Zealand, please. Usman Khawaja's announced his retirement. That's no surprise either. At the age of 39, he had a couple of sly digs to the Australian media about his background, which obviously I don't know too much about why he's having that sort of dig. It wasn't a sly dig, it was a full out having a dig at Australian journalists, which was, and a proper dig at them as well. To heel back 5, no more 5-0, 3-1. The weather forecast isn't great.
Your 5-0 bet slips are in tatters, James.
They went up in smoke, yeah. Oh, when you back it 7-1,
Just quickly on Bashir, it seems inconceivable to me that you go into a Sydney test, given how its favoured spinners historically, without a proper, genuine spinner.
Speak to Baz McCullum. Yeah, but I saw a picture of the pitch, and it looked like it hadn't been cut in 3 months. Like you couldn't tell the difference between the pitch and the rest of the square and the rest of the outfield. Please don't. I mean, as I said last week, I think they'll make it as a pitch that will try and last at least 4 days. Australian cricket can't afford another quick test match.
But surely that plays into the hands. That's going to play into the hands of spinners, right? I don't know. I just find it weird that, if nothing else, let's see what you have with Bashir in terms of, yes, it may be a dead rubber effectively, but he'll learn a lot from playing in that sort of environment.
But how's he supposed to succeed, Bashir, in this test match? This is my issue with him, right? No, it's not necessarily his fault. So he obviously broke his finger in the final test, in the second test match, I think, against India fielding, and then took the final wicket with his finger hanging off, essentially. He bowled. Who did he get to? I can't remember who he bowled. It wasn't Bumrah, he wasn't playing. Might have been Shiraj anyway, when it rolled back onto his stumps and just took the barrel off in England once. He hasn't played since July in a test match. His confidence must have been taken a hammering because of not being picked. He's played one Mickey Mouse warm-up game at the beginning of the series when he got slapped around by the England 11, and then played the Lions game, bowled 15 overs, 0 for 120 odd, being hit out the park by the Australian A side that won by an innings and plenty. Nathan McSweeney got a double ton. He should be playing this test match, by the way. McSweeney's a decent cricketer. Maybe not an opener, but middle order player for Australia in the next couple of years. He will definitely be playing. And Costas will be, I know he looks a bit of a rabbit, but he'll be opening at some point, replacing. They're not going to keep Header. Anyway, going back to Bashir, how's he supposed to succeed, right? He's been given no opportunity to play any sort of cricket. Nets are absolutely irrelevant because England don't treat nets properly. We know that. They just go in and start slogging. The stories coming out about Brook reverse sweeping, ramping, whatever he wants to do in nets, not taken seriously. Stokes almost has lost confidence in him. As soon as he comes on to bowl, if he's bowling against Head or Steve Smith, or anyone, to be honest, they're going to try and whack him out the park again. And he's going to be bowling 10, 15 overs, maybe get the odd wicket down at Cow Corner, 1 for 120. Does the lad no good whatsoever, don't develop him as a cricketer, and then you go back to your pace bowlers, and no wonder our pace bowlers break down. So I don't see the plan with it.
No, but you can't come into this test series with him unless you have some sort of confidence in his abilities, surely.
Yeah.
I know you said
they haven't given him any confidence to play. I know he didn't play because of his injuries, but not to pick him at Perth because he picked the 4 quicks. And then you go and pick Will Jack from absolutely nowhere, by the way. He's not played any red ball cricket for Surrey. And they go, well, actually, we're going to pick you because we need a bit of batting. And then not playing me. I feel sorry for that. Like, I don't think he's good enough or ready enough at this level at the moment anyway.
So you think
he's to bowl, but how's he supposed to succeed if he play? I don't think he will play, but how will England give him the best possible opportunity to play and succeed in Sydney Test match when he hasn't played? It's just like, go on then, mate, have a bowl. Like,
I think one of the problems, and I never really quite understand, is in terms of sort of England planning, is obviously start the summer in England, it'll be green pitches, he won't play then. It's, if you're not picking spinners on tours like Australia, obviously ignore the subcontinent for a moment, but it seems like such a short-sighted approach to not having someone you can trust in these types of series. It just absolutely baffles me, to be honest.
They picked him purposely for the Ashes 2 years ago when he played 10 first-class games. Not even a starter at Somerset. Jack Leach, who's garbage, starter there. So he's out of contract. He's been on loan a couple of times. And then you don't pick him. It's ridiculous. It winds me up. It's just like, feel sorry for the lad. Carry drinks around Australia. Great. And then you might get a chance, you might not. And if you do get a chance, you want to hide into nothing.
I think one of the things that we will see is that, there'll probably be some narratives on the back of whatever happens in this test. I mean, let's be really clear. Whatever happens in this test really counts for nothing. It, matters absolutely nothing. And, whether that be in terms of, you can imagine England winning this test and McCullum and Stokes. I saw Stokes come out with comments today basically thinking no one else could do a better job than McCullum could and all this sort of stuff. It was just, I mean, my worry would be is if you want change, England to change from the top, is you really want Australia to win this test. Because I suspect if England lose 3-2, an awful lot of excuses can be made sort of justifying the result.
Well, no wonder Stokes wants to keep McCullum, because one of his mates is the coach. He likes to set up in terms of it's relaxed, it's not high pressurized in per se. You can play golf, you don't have to practice as hard as another coach might do. No real warm-up games. So I can't. Of course, he's going to back his mate in the press conferences. But yeah, as an England fan, it sounds ridiculous, but I'd rather lose 4-1 and get some change. 3-2, paper's over, a load of cracks. Excuse the pun, it's not a pun intended for cricket, but it's yeah. But yeah, SCG, an iconic stadium in world cricket. Good place to go and watch cricket, though.
Obviously, the darts, we are now into semi-finals. So Littler will play Searle and Van Veen will play Anderson later today. It feels like it's been a pretty epic World Championships. I mean, so many great stories along the way. Any particular favourites for you?
Littler's been awesome the last couple of games. He really has. Averaging 105 plus. Very good. He's playing Ryan Searle, who was very good, impressively against Johnny Clayton yesterday afternoon. Only averaged mid-90s, but his doubling was up above 55%, which is sensational at this level. And he's moved into the top 10 of the world, Ryan Searle. He won't feel overawed tonight. First game against Littler on 7:15 UK time tonight. Littler's heavy favourite, and quite rightly. But you never know. But you said it before the tournament starts. It's first of 6 sets tonight. That's quite a lot of sets you have to win against Littler to beat him. The way he's playing, he's confident. Obviously, Littler had a bit of a pop against the crowd a couple of games ago. Then obviously he knew he'd talked a load of rubbish. So he came back on himself yesterday and said the crowd are great, blah, blah, blah. I fancy Littler to win probably 6-2, maybe 6-1, 6-2. The other game is more of an interest to me. Gary Anderson, obviously, was mightily impressive yesterday afternoon, beating Justin Hood, who was good. And the tournament ended, came in world 89 or something. Gary Anderson's been another quietly impressive run to semi-finals. He's up against Dutch lad, who's now world number 3 he's moving up to, who was sensational last night, beating Luke Humphries 5-1. He averaged 105 and Humphries averaged 101. Humphries didn't play badly and he just got beat 5-1. He's impressive. That'll be 6-5, I think, either way. I can't pick a winner in that one. And then obviously finals on Saturday night.
It's 2 good games. I mean, Van Veen's interesting because obviously he won the World Youth Championships and, he has been very impressive. But, whenever I've seen him against Littler just seems to find a way. And that's what Littler does. I mean, he's just been incredible. And I thought the crowd interactions and the issues he was having was quite interesting. Just in terms of, I've seen it before with Littler. I think it was events, was it in Germany or somewhere like that, where he was on the wrong end of the crowd and it really affected him in terms of how he actually played. He doesn't take criticism or booing particularly well. and it does affect him. So it'd be interesting to see if there's any sort of shenanigans.
Well, there's one thing about darts is the fans pick to support the underdog 99 times out of 100 at Ali Pali. So if Ryan Searle gets on a roll, they'll be supporting him because they'll want to see an upset and they'll want to see Littler struggle more. You know, they don't want to see Littler win 6-0 kind of thing because it would be boring. They want more darts kind of thing. More darts, more pints. It's way to them for darts fans anyway.
I think my favourite moment of the tournament, I can't remember his name, the Swedish lad who went for the 9-darter with the bull attempt.
Really, didn't see that.
I think that would be my highlight. You know, it's just outrageous to even think about trying it.
60 grand if you get 9-darter, by the way.
You won?
60 grand if you get a 9-darter. That's obviously money shared, but it hasn't been one this tournament. Been a couple of close ones, yeah. But it wouldn't surprise me again. I know darts fans keep on saying it and commentators, but it just wouldn't be surprised at all. The good thing about games tonight, they'll be quick. It'll flow quickly, kind of thing. All four players play of a decent standard, playing wise, not like some issues that has been seen during the tournament where players are slowing it down and trying to do this and tactics. It'll be bang, bang, bang. Don't take your eyes off it. Yeah. So maybe I'll go over to watch the second semi-final tonight, which is the Anderson match. Littler's on first.
NFL, we saw Rams actually surprising loss to the Falcons earlier in the week. Got themselves in a big hole early on. Couldn't quite get out of it. Almost did, but didn't. A bit of a baffling result, really. What it sees is the Seahawks are now favourites for the Super Bowl ahead of the Rams. Not sure that's quite right, but there's some interesting games this week, actually, in terms of Seattle and 49ers. There's obviously a lot of playoff consequences there in terms of seeds and buys and all that sort of stuff. There's obviously all division rivalries this week, so there'll be a lot of interesting games. I think even things like Baltimore, Pittsburgh is always a fun game to watch. Lions are at Chicago as well, so we will see. Obviously, it doesn't. I think there's a game on Saturday night this week as well. I think we've got Carolina.
They're at Tampa. They're at Tampa, aren't they, Carolina Panthers?
Yep. So we get a bit of Saturday night NFL action as well, but it's going to be just interesting to watch, just in terms of where these Super Bowl teams are at. No one is really standing out at the moment. It feels so wide open, it's untrue. And
which is great for the sport.
It's great for the sport, absolutely.
And it's great for neutral. Like, I don't have a team I follow. I like the sport. I don't have a team I support. It's not like I go, I'm a 49ers fan or a Seahawks or whoever it is. So, yeah, it's great for me when I can watch it, especially when I get home the next couple of days, the playoff games, although they're obviously later in time for us UK lads. But, yeah, it's great because you don't know who's going to win. So it's brilliant to watch, and it means something. Everything's on the line the next couple of weeks. Well, this is the last week, isn't it? Week 18, so yeah.
So one thing did happen this week is the absolute sporting GOAT, Tiger Woods, turned 50. So there's some great clips on YouTube of his things like his 50 greatest shots and things like that. It is just absolutely absurd. As a huge Tiger fan, obviously, it just makes me feel old, to be honest, that he's now 50.
1997, wasn't it? When he shot 40 in the front nine at Augusta. Was it 97, his first Augusta win?
Yes.
And he shot 40 in the opening nine, and he wins by country mile. Yeah.
It's just, honestly, lucky to watch a lot of sport, but I'm so lucky to have watched so many of his big moments live as well. So not just watching clips back, you watching them live. It's just been incredible. I still think the most ridiculous one was the President's Cup, where he had to chip in, and he did. It was absolutely nuts.
I still think of that US Open against Rocco Mediate at, was it Torrey Pines or
Torrey
Pebble?
Pines, yeah.
Torrey Pines, when they used to have the 18-hole playoff on the Monday, and wasn't match play, it was stroke play as well, wasn't it?
Yep.
And he had a double fracture in his leg. I mean, walking 4.5 hours, 5 hours around that beach.
I mean, he had to hole a very tricky putt on final hole regulation on 18.
On the Sunday, yeah.
Big break off the right. Incredible putt to get into that playoff.
With a broken leg in 2 or 3 places, whatever like that. Didn't play a game for God knows how long after that. And was that
absolutely brilliant.
It's just, unfortunately, we won't see him again. I don't think in a PGA Tour event. I think his body's finally given up on him. But yeah, I mean, there's so many shots we could talk about. We could be here all day talking about him. But the levels of him compared to any other golfer has just been ridiculous. He was just like out on his own. I mean, I know he's won 15 majors, but what was it, like 80 PGA Tour events? Silly. Lucky enough, as you say, to watch him in his pomp kind of thing, as live kind of thing. Yeah, very.
I think the only regret I have is that he didn't get to 18 majors, because people will still claim that Nicholas was better and all this sort of stuff. And if you look at things like field depth and all this sort of stuff, just absolute nonsense. Final thing is obviously loads of Premier League again. Feels pretty never ending at the moment in terms of matches after matches after matches. One that I'm looking forward to seeing actually is quite interesting is Leeds Man United. So one of the quirks of the fixture list is that teams haven't played each other this yet. So one set of matches haven't happened. So that's where the midweek was a bit of a nonsense, is that you actually had teams playing each other for a second time before everyone's played each other. And we have Leeds Man United, obviously a bit of hatred there, rivalry. United are going to be missing a lot. Man United are going to be missing plenty of their bigger name players. Leeds will fancy that big time at Ellen Road.
What time of the day is that game tomorrow, Saturday? Is that a 3 p.m. game? I'm just checking now. Or is that a 5:30 game? Could it's Sunday. Sorry. 12:30 on a Sunday. Of course, we should have known that, actually. I was never going to be having that in an evening game with the history between those two sets of fans. 12:30 Sunday. Yeah, that's a fun game to watch. I fancy Leeds there. If Calvert-Lewin starts, I know he's only played half an hour last night, but he could really cause the little known Martinez some issues there if Leeds play to his strengths, which they should do. He could really have some fun against Martinez and Shaw and Haven at the back there. I don't think Maguire will do it at back fit. Also, you boys against Forest, try and get back to winning ways. Should do tomorrow at 12:30. Tricky game, bit of a local derby. Arsenal away at Bournemouth, where they slipped up last year. Bournemouth had a good result against Chelsea. You don't know. Semenyo looks like he's still going to be there at the time of recording this podcast, so he'll probably play. The game will see.
Good chance Rice won't be fit either.
Yeah, that's a big blow for them. Although they've got cover, Merino obviously can play, he can get sent off, obviously. So, and interestingly, he plays ahead of Eze. Was not surprising for me. We talked about it. Eze is the Odegaard replacement. They won't play Eze and Odegaard away from home in the Premier League, in my view. Man City, Chelsea, Sunday night or Sunday evening game is the...
Casado's out for that.
Casado is? Well...
Suspended. Right. So that's one... Right. So that yellow card, right. So he obviously got booked after 4 minutes in that Bournemouth game.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
It was never a foul. It was certainly never a yellow card. 4 minutes in. I talked about it last time in terms of that Villa-Chelsea game where shocking tackle after 9 minutes, didn't get a yellow card. and it's almost as if the referees have sat down, reviewed the footage of what happened in that round of games, and gone, well, if Caicedo commits a foul in those first 4 minutes and is worthy of a yellow card, or 10 minutes, we are going to book him this time. And he ends up being booked when he shouldn't have been booked. And it's that sort of inconsistency that just drives you absolutely crazy. And, he's going to be a big, big miss for Chelsea, to be honest.
City will tear them apart. And then one more thing about football is the Snooker Masters starts a week on Sunday on the 11th at Ali Pali. Top 16 players, isn't it? The Masters Invitational, isn't it? Top 16?
Yep. So I think Ronnie plays Robertson, for example. So there'll be some interesting stuff there. But
Trump's on the best side of the draw there. Spoke to a mate this afternoon about a big snooker fan. He's got tickets to watch Williams versus Mark Allen as well. That'd be a good game. There's always good games because top 16 players in the world. And he was saying Trump's on the right side of the draw. So there's something, if anyone wants to flatter there, I think Trump's slight favourite. But Selby obviously is playing really well as well. So it'll be some good games to watch. Starts on the 11th, which is week Sunday, 9 days from today.
Right, James. Obviously, safe travels back to the UK, and I don't know quite when the next podcast will be. I mean, we obviously need to sort out exactly when it is because I think there is some travelling going on.
Tuesday, probably.
But we will try and get it out as soon as we can. But thank you very much.
Yeah, see you all over the weekend. Have enjoyed the sport.